I'm Annabel Crabb. Here, gagging to answer your questions tonight are political leader turned thought leader, John Hewson, the Director of Programs at the Australian Futures Project, Chloë Spackman, engineer, futurist and broadcaster, Nguyen, the author of Surviving the 21st Century, Julian, Cribb, and the Director of the Centre for Sustainable Materials Research and Technology, Veena, Sahajwalla. Please welcome the panel. Now, we've brought all these intensely clever experts together to discuss the future and the threats that lie over the horizon. You know, food security, disease, overpopulation, artificial intelligence. They don't feature in the headlines, these things, quite so much as climate change, but they do require strategic attention. And how good is our democratic system at dealing with these challenges? Now, we've taken the tactful step of not actually inviting anyone from our existing democratic system. As you'll notice, looking at the panel, there's a distinct lack of serving politicians. So we can talk about them behind their backs as much as we like. Now, our first question tonight comes from Tara McDonald.
We seem to be trying to live longer at any cost and prolonging the inevitable, which is death. Should we be spending more time and money on protecting our future generations instead of ourselves?
Right. John Hewson, I'm going to send this to you as the senior figure on the panel. So does this idea of spending money on longevity become more attractive as the years roll by?
Age is obviously an advantage to me, isn't it? Look, I think it probably does. I mean, it gives you more time to focus on what you should have done earlier in life and what is yet to be from the point of view of global futures. So, yes, I think it gives you a chance to do that. OK,
Julian, one of the most sophisticated elements of being human is this ability to make sacrifices in the short term to improve things in the long term. It's also one of the great secrets of being a good political leader. Are we any good at it at the moment?
Well, at the moment, we're not recognising the real nature of the threats that we face, the scale of them, the magnitude and the fact that they're all coming together at the one time. They are very serious. They could end our civilisation. They could even, in the worst case scenarios, result in human extinction. We need to recognise those factors in order to understand the threats, and we have to understand them in order to solve them. And there are solutions. There is a good news message out of this. There are fantastic solutions.
Veena, extending the longevity of life is a fairly expensive business. Do we pursue it at the cost of all else?
That the conversation is really around the underpinning science, technology and the moral questions of, you know, what are we really doing as human beings on this planet in terms of being able to improve the quality of life and delivering justice for everyone. And I think people doing incredibly amazing work. And I think that's really how we've got to see it. We've improved the quality of life for so many people on this planet. So I think there is all of this holistic conversation that we need to have, how clever people together and address some of the really complex challenges that we all face. So I think it's really, really important that we support each other and we collaborate. And I think, to me, that's the best way if we see a collaborative future.
Is it necessarily true that the higher quality of life we all individually expect, the more expensive it is for the planet?
I think, you know, I mean, not necessarily so. When we talk about quality of life, I think we can also think of that collaborative future where we can actually say that, look, let's work so we can help each other. So I think the fact that we can go and, you know, bring about rescues and new, you know, medical systems and help people who are actually in need of a lot of these solutions means that we are using our knowledge to improve the lives of so many people on this planet. And I think that's how we've got to see how we as human beings can actually develop a better collaborative future.
Turning to you, Chloë, you work at the Australian Futures Project. Is that frustrating in this short attention age?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, our issue is that we're trapped in this bubble of short-term thinking. And, you know, the way the modern politics works, it's become this kind of, you know, egos jockeying for power. It's about power, it's not about leadership. And I think that's sort of, you know, we see this hyper-partisan, hyper-divisive conversation where it's really win at all costs game. And what's at the expense of that is thinking about some of these long-term issues. And I don't necessarily just mean some of the potential catastrophes that, Julian speaks of. But I even mean some of the critical issues that are important for Australia to have a flourishing future. So things like tax reform or the gender pay gap or Indigenous disadvantage. I think these are the things we're making progress on when we're in this short-term bubble.
Okay, well, we might get to some of the solutions to short-termism in a bit. Just out of curiosity, Jordan, as the youngest person on this panel, what would you like us to be spending a bit more money on in terms of future generations?
I'm going to quickly put out there, I'm probably not that as young as I look.
Really? He's
30,
68.
I'm 35. Half of it's the silly hair and the half Asian. No, I think we've got to be focused on the future, and I think this is what's happening. We're actually starting to raise this conversation so much more these days about where we are headed in the future. And Veena, you put this really well, talking about quality of life. We've been living longer lives because of our modern medicine, because of so many of the advancements that we've had in science and technology. But not only are we focusing on extension of life, we've got to focus on quality of life too. And that is, like you said, it's holistic. It's very full circle. There are so many factors that play into the lives that we're going to be leading in the future. But we're raising these conversations, and I think that's the first step.
Okay, well, let's hear from our second questioner now. Our second question comes from Andrea Wood.
Good evening. My question is for Julian. 40% of the food produced in the world does not get eaten, while 815 million people worldwide go to bed hungry. How do we get people to understand quickly and globally that our food security is under threat and to start treating food as the precious resource that it really is?
Right, thank you. Today we, the human species, will eat 23 billion meals. By 2050s, that's going to be 35 billion meals. Now, the soil to grow those meals is vanishing at a rate of 75 billion tonnes a year. The water that our farmers need to grow those meals is being taken by the big cities. It's being taken by miners. There's just not enough water any longer in many countries, not just in Australia. So there's a crunch coming here. There's not enough nutrients. And the climate in which agriculture was born has changed for all time. So this means that we have a growing demand for food and a shrinking resource base with which to produce it. Now, to solve that, we really need a food revolution. We need a food revolution like the green energy revolution, worldwide, everyone getting in on this. We need to create a food supply that is climate-proof and which is sustainable, and we don't have that at the moment. I can give you the details if you want, but...
well, I'm interested in, you write quite a lot about the importance of bringing food production back into urban areas.
Yes.
Now, how does that help?
Well, cities are throwing away a vast quantity of nutrients and water every single day. We're just throwing them in the ocean. If we recycle those things, if we use them over and over again, we can have a renewable food supply. So cities, I believe, in future will grow a third of the world's food. We will also grow a third on farms that are regenerative, farms that regenerate the urban...
With our use of water, it's something that is a very precious thing. It's with Discovery Channel for a while, getting to travel the world, finding out how science and technology influences and impacts the environment. And plateau are so important because they give birth to the rivers that go through India, through China, through many different plateau are so important because they give birth to the rivers that go through India, through China, many different countries. And they've been in the third stage of major decline, and so they were starting to utilise utilise artificial intelligence in the form of machine learning, whilst also being able to take in lots and lots of data about what's happening there in the Tibetan glaciers. And they were saying that by 2050, based on this decline, by 2050, all of India and all of China we'll have to have seriously considered a new water source if nothing has been changed in our rate of climate change, and the rate of change that has had the impact on that, on those spreading glaciers. And so they were saying then that leads to potential and stuff like that being over resources like water. And I think it's an important thing that we model these, understand these, and take action on it.
And there's another issue, isn't it? I mean, we talk about food, we've got to also bear in mind that the resources that actually go into packaging and delivery and getting the food out to where we need food, realize how important it is in making sure that it is accessible and affordable. Because how important it is in making sure that it is accessible, because of course many people on this planet who clearly could benefit from what might be seen as food that's getting wasted. So I don't also think about how, in fact, our ability to package food and deliver that has actually resulted in positive outcomes. So I think we need to be able to also use technology and show how this can deliver better outcomes for everyone on this planet. I think, again, talking in a holistic way, which might, help us think that we need to be mindful.
Veena, you're a person who's made a career out of looking at waste and being a little bit in love with waste and the potential of waste. 40% of food produced not being eaten. What sort of an opportunity is that, do you think, for humanity?
Yeah, no, look, I think, as I think we all realise, and I think in the question as well, was really about the fact that we recognise that if there are so many people who are not getting the right nourishment as part of their everyday lives, I think we need to be able to, if we all started to think about solutions that are going to be, consumption of food in a way that it's also around healthy eating and healthy living. So we're sort of questioning, are we sort of taking in food in a way that is also fit for our purpose and life as we see it today, not as life as it used to be all those decades ago. So I think it's also about questioning, how we're consuming that food, and can we actually now we are fair and equitable in the way we distribute all of that food.
Chloë?
I just wanted to put a little bit of a government lens on this, because with the issue of food waste, Australian Futurist Project actually worked with the government on some of the food waste strategy. And it's interesting that part of the dysfunction in that actually came from the fact that you had 3 levels of government all working, and they didn't actually understand what the roles and responsibilities of those 3 levels of government were. I think it's important to note that, there was a lot of creativity and innovation, willpower, and people who were putting a lot of passion into solving this problem in government. But it was sort of this structural issue with the way, state, local and federal government works together that was inhibiting that working well.
Actually, that all of the food waste from Commonwealth Parliament House goes to a local worm farm. So something is productive from the effluent from that building. We've got another question that's a related one from Melissa Neve.
Yeah, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about meat and whether we need to be moving away from meat in order to be able to feed future populations.